Welcome everyone to our Topic Tuesday webinar for December. We're excited to have everyone join us. We've got a lineup of great speakers that will be sharing guidance to U.S. educators on how to support students with disabilities in college access and that journey. We're excited about these experts in the field and what all they have to share their knowledge this morning. As we have everyone join us, we've got a few housekeeping reminders. We are in webinar mode, and so while we can't see or hear you, we're excited to still engage with you. So throughout the presentation, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there are two features. There's a Q&A feature and a chat. The chat will go directly to our panelists in case there's a direct question or a personal question that you don't want shared out to the larger audience or the tech issue. The Q&A is where we ask that you put all of your general questions. Those will be addressed either live by the panelists or typed in that so we can make sure and monitor and not miss any questions. So we still want to engage with you in this presentation. As everyone is joining us, our friends across the state, we do have a poll question. In what year and under what president was the Americans with Disability Act, commonly referred to as ADA, signed into law? So we'll launch that poll. You'll see it pop up on your screen. You'll select which you think is the correct answer. As participants are joining our webinar, it's kind of a mind setting to get into the thoughts around supporting students that may benefit from some of the ADA laws. All right, give everybody about 5 more seconds to answer that poll question. Okay. So the correct answer here is 1990 by President George H.W. Bush. So about 50% of everybody got that correct. Great job on your history and knowledge there. This is a new space for you. We're excited that you're joining us to learn not only about this, but then more broadly on how you can specifically help your students in that post-secondary planning. I will send it over to Shannon to get us started.
All right, good morning, everybody. Hello and welcome to the webinar. I'm Shannon Grimsley, the Assistant Director of Training and Counselor Outreach for the Woodward Hines Education Foundation and the Get to College program. We are recording today's session and we will send you a link to anyone who is registered. For those watching, today's date is December 6th, 2022, and the material in this webinar is current through the 22-23 school year. In today's session, Supporting Students with Disabilities in College Access, you will hear from a panel of experts that work within their educational settings to assist students with disabilities on their path to college access. I will now share a little background on Get to College and a few logistics about the webinar before we get started. Get to College is a nonprofit program of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. We have 3 centers in Mississippi, one in Jackson, Ocean Springs, and South Haven, and we help parents, students, and high school counselors with all aspects of the college planning process and financial aid. And all of our services are free. In our centers, we offer personalized college counseling appointments where we can help students know when to apply for admission and scholarship, fill out their FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, or advise on essay writing and interviewing. So as we mentioned earlier in the webinar, we cannot see or hear you, but we do ask that you ask us questions at any point through the Q&A or the chat. My co-host, Kirsten Dufour, will be monitoring and replying to the Q&A today, and we will have a time for live Q&A with the presenters at the end. But as I said, feel free to message your questions at any time. I would now like to introduce our speakers for the day. Our first speaker is Nicole Carter. Nicole is the Care and Accessibility Specialist, Title IX Coordinator at Millsaps College. She is going into her 3rd year in this position. And Nicole states, the best way to describe my position is that I help to connect our students the resources that we have available to them, both on and off campus. So we're glad you're here with us today, Nicole. Our second presenter is Colin Dunnigan. Colin is the Director of College Counseling and Associate Head of Upper School at St. Andrew's Episcopal School here in Ridgeland, sorry, not Jackson, Ridgeland. Colin has spent 30 years in independent schools in North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio, and Mississippi. In addition to his current work, he has served as a Spanish teacher, Director of Admission, Head of Upper School, and Director of Development. Colin has also coached football, basketball, lacrosse, and golf. He is a member of NACAC, SACAC, and the Association of College Counselors in Independent Schools. So welcome, Colin. We're glad to have you with us today. And our last presenter is Holly Marjanovic. Holly is the Upper School Learning Facilitator at St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Ridgeland. She has been in this role for 7 years. 2 of her job duties relevant to today's conversation are helping students receive accommodations from both ACT and College Board for standardized testing and guiding students through the process of applying for accommodations to the colleges at which they will apply and attend. Holly has been an educator for 18 years with experience in Hinds County Public Schools, Jackson Public Schools, Escondido Charter Public School in California, and also a school in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Her teaching credentials include secondary ELA, social studies, Spanish, ESL, and exceptional education for mild to moderate. Holly is a proud graduate of Raymond High School here in Mississippi, Mississippi State University with a BA in history, and Belhaven College with an MA in teaching. She is most importantly wife to Petru Marjanovic, who is a teacher at Pearl High School, and mom to Jackson and Mila, who are 11 and 9 years old. So welcome, Nicole, Colin, and Holly. And at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you. And Holly, I believe we're going to hear from you first.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here. I can't see anyone, so this is my first Zoom presentation, so please bear with me. So I just want to give you a little background on myself and then my own personal connection to this topic. My daughter, as she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 2 years old. And so we do deal with physical disabilities in our household. And then my son has, he was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD in kindergarten. And so that has also been like a neurodiverse thing that we deal with in our household. And it's a lot of fun. So I'm about to share my screen with you. So we definitely get the importance of the partnership between school and home, and they're just thankful for you all being here. And I know that you can take this information back to parents because it's so needed and helpful and reassuring to know that, you know, just because our kids have these labels and these diagnoses and extra things they have to deal with, that college is very much available to them, and they can be very successful. So all right, so today the topic I'm going to present on is supporting students with neurodiverse or physical needs in the college selection process. And so the first thing I want to say is what I say to every family is just because your student has a label of some sort with a disability, that doesn't mean they can't go to college, that they can't do things post-secondary. So they do not have to report their disability in the college admissions process. That's not a question they really have to answer. If they get extended time or other accommodations on the ACT or College Board for the AP exams or SAT or PSAT, they don't have to, those institutions do not report that back to the college that they have these accommodations. And so they just get the scores just like every other student would. So I think that's a very important and reassuring thing I know for a lot of my students and parents to hear. However, there are 2 very essential questions that every college student really needs to, or every student, you know, thinking about going on after high school needs to have answered. And most importantly, for those kiddos who do have a few extra needs, and those are: what services will the student need to have provided by the college or university in order to be successful? And then the other is the location of the college or university a place that will have additional services to support the needs of the student? So the first question, I want to start by saying not every college is equal in what they provide. That is something I'm learning as I'm helping students with the admissions process, and then just kind of hearing back from them about their experiences, about, the college said they would do this, what are they actually doing? I try to keep up with some of my kiddos and figure out what's going on, and how easy is it for you to get these services? Are you having to do a lot of the legwork? What is that like? So I think that as you get to know, your students, if you can stay in touch with them after they graduate, it really is helpful to know, like, what are their experiences, so that you can pass that information on to, students who are currently seniors or going to be seniors. And then the location of the college. And I think this is really important when you think about kiddos who need help with transportation issues. Some colleges are really great and they offer shuttles and things to different places around town. Some don't. It is a really big campus, making sure that they do have a way to get around campus. Housing needs is a huge one I'll go into later. And then access to clinics and pharmacies and all those types of things. That's really important for some of our kids for them to have access. So how to find out what services are offered at universities and colleges? By far, the easiest way is to just check the website. Sometimes it's kind of hard within a university website because they're just so verbose and there's so much information there to find exactly what it is you're looking for. My most successful way in finding what colleges offer is to type to Google or whatever search engine it is you use, type the college name, and then in the phrase "and student disability services." That almost always will result in the top 3 things that it comes back with. So an example would be Mississippi State University and Student Disability Services. So I think I'm going to try to show you guys a couple of different examples of what some different resource pages look like at these places. So this is at Mississippi State University. I think you can see it. And what you'll find on their pages is kind of a mission statement for what they do. And then what is super helpful is you keep scrolling and you'll see the services they offer. So this is very, very important, I think, in terms of like just getting a very quick general overview of like, do they have something that will help my students? So I not a lot, but I do have, I think every year I have a student or two who is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And so what I have found at Mississippi State, I want to kind of put a plug in here for them, if that's okay, is that they offer these autism liaison services. And this is not something I've seen at every university around in this area. So it's just really good to familiarize yourself with what specific things each college offers. Because there are services, again, that are very niche that might be for certain students, but not in other places, other universities. Okay, the other thing that these websites are helpful with is it tells you what to do. Like, here's a schedule of what to do if you get these services. And then, okay, move. There should be, maybe not. There's, I'm going to go to a different one. Sometimes you'll find within these websites, so this is Jackson State, and you will see, again, their mission statement, kind of their process, and then you can kind of click around. So you see on this right-hand side that they have what we offer. So again, you can click there and you can see that they do breaks as needed, extended time, note-taking accommodations, textbooks and alternate formats, advocacy, disability-related counseling, and then referral coordination. So that's really important. What you also find is that the forms and additional information that they might need in order to, like the registration form, that's huge. So to get accommodations at a university, it's a separate process. It's not through the admissions department. It is always going to be through these disability support offices. So most of the websites will have the information that the student needs in order to get to apply. This is the Hines Community College website, and you see here they have their information on what they offer, and then again, steps to obtain the accommodation. So just kind of going through a few of these with you guys so you're familiar with what it is you should be looking for. And this is Belhaven College, for example, the local private school. So you can kind of see all of that there. So what I'll say about the process for getting support is that it's not the same at every single college. I found that here's an example. Some of my students who've gone to Mississippi State, they simply just have to fill out the application that's online. They submit their accommodation plan that we have here at school for them. They might submit their ACT and PSAT letters that say they got accommodations on standardized testing. And that might be sufficient. I know with some of my students who've gone to Ole Miss, they have to submit all those same things, but also go through a separate interview process to talk about like what services they received at school. And so there's the added layer there. Some schools are very adamant about requiring a like an evaluation, psychoeducational evaluation. I think in public school, I think that the IEP would suffice in that situation. If they're coming from private school, though, it's the psychoeducational evaluation, since we don't have exceptional education departments. If you find, and this does happen from time to time, that you just can't find a website, I usually call the college or university and I'll try the counseling department and ask them like, hey, I have this student and these are the things, and who would I need to contact? Who can I put them in contact with? So the counseling departments always seem to be very helpful. So that is definitely a way to go if you can't find further information online. And then how to find information about local services at various colleges and universities. Again, I go to Google or your preferred search engine, and then ask the students. We always encourage them to talk to their family, their primary care physician or specialist or psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist, whoever it is, to see what post-secondary institutions or locations they might recommend. They might have some ideas on what would be best to support these students in moving on in post-secondary. So sometimes students, and we're in Mississippi, I mean, let's be honest, I love living in Jackson because I know I can get to Batson Hospital and all of my daughters, her doctors are here. But if we move outside of Jackson, if we're outside of Jackson, there just aren't, places that, I hear about rural hospitals closing and that sort of thing. That's kind of scary. So if they're thinking about going to places that just don't have those local resources, there are things that they can do on the front end to help mitigate some of what they might experience. And definitely, I think what's a kind of a neat silver lining from the past few years is that more and more doctors are offering telehealth appointments. And so that can be, that could happen. And they just go do blood work like at a local clinic, and then they can get the results at the doctor's office, and then they can do a telehealth appointment. Insurance companies, we have talked about with students about moving medication from monthly supply to maybe getting a 3-month supply. And then if at all possible, maybe a mail order pharmacy, that can be helpful. Connecting with a local pharmacy prior to leaving for the college destination is also important. Go ahead and get them on file there and have the insurance and make sure that everything's going to go kind of smoothly. Figuring out carpool situations to and from campus. So when I was actually a freshman at Hines Community College, I lived in the dorm, and my first roommate was a girl who was totally blind. And it was interesting because I don't know that when they placed her in the housing that they understood that she was blind. And it was a whole new experience for me to have to understand, I've got to keep this same path clear all the time. I can't leave things out. And she had to go upstairs, and then we had a shared bathroom with 6 other girls, and it was just kind of a mess. And I think about carpooling. Her mom luckily had contacted me before school started because we could do that with roommates. And I guess they can do that now, via various platforms. But I was her carpool. I would take her home on the weekends because she didn't live very far. We were Hines. And then when we went on to Mississippi State, it was great because she had me as a contact, and I was able to drive her to and from Jackson on multiple occasions. So, the great news is that after the first semester, she kind of went to the housing department, and they got her her own single room and everything, and she didn't have to deal with other people in a private bathroom. So that was much better for her, but it just made, I think, if she could have had that from the get-go, it could have been a much better experience for her. So I just want to put that out there, just making sure that the colleges and universities can accommodate for these reasons. And then having emergency contact information for people in the area who can be of help. So this is a time to think about, like, we live in Mississippi and it's all about, I'm from so-and-so. Oh, do you know so-and-so? I mean, just like make those connections. And even if it is like a long lost cousin or uncle or aunt, or, somebody that knew mama, when she was 5 years old. I mean, it's time to rekindle some of those connections. And sometimes they lead to like really cool relationships later on. So just having a number you can call, who can go check on the child, if there is a tornado, or whatever, our crazy weather situation that's happening on Tuesday. So, all right, so going to the next slide, when to start these conversations. So it really depends on the student. If I see a student who has a diagnosis, kiddo, particularly if they have autism spectrum disorder and this really struggling in 9th grade year, but they have this idea like, I'm gonna go to, I don't know, just whatever school that's out of state, and it's like, well, friend, like we need to talk about like what does that mean? Like, what skills do you have to get to that place? Like, and how much are you truly motivated to do? And if this isn't maybe the place, here are some places that really, would offer some things to help, like kind of what are realistic for you to achieve in the next 3 or 4 years while you're in high school in terms of you being independent. So, that often involves getting a lot of like outside people involved, the family involved for sure, having, more honest conversations with doctors and therapists and different people like that. But it just, it takes a village for all kids to get to college, but particularly kids with a diagnosis of some sort. So if I see a student who has a diagnosis of ADHD and is typically doing okay, just has minor support of like needing extended time on tests, maybe occasional, like needs a test with me because they get a little anxious. It might be really end of junior year or senior year before I have a conversation with them. And I'm going to say that, here at St. Andrews, I feel like every year in the 9th, 10th grade class, there's maybe, 2 or 3 who I'm having conversations with already about like, are you thinking about these colleges, and here's some things that they offer. But by and large, most of the kids I'm really talking with their senior year about their choices. And we have a great college counseling department too. And they do a great job of talking with them and being realistic. So how I communicate with seniors once they have selected a college or university on how to apply for services is that once Mr. Dunnigan sends out the information related to who's going where, I looked at that list. I find all the students who have some sort of accommodation on file with the school, and I email them and their parents because kids don't always check email. So this is a sample of what I say. Congratulations on your decision. I give them the link to the place where they're going that has the information, what they would need to apply for the services. And then I attach the documents they'll need to submit. So again, those documents typically look like the school-based plan, which is an IEP, a 504. We call them an official plan here at St. Andrews. Any psychological testing that's on file, a doctor's letter or note, which would be, more appropriate in the case of a physical disability, medical records, if we have any on file here, and then letters from the ACT and College Board regarding accommodations on their standardized testing. Which is really important to have these in place if for neurodiverse reasons, by the end of 10th grade or 11th grade year, we're just finding, more and more kids aren't able to get accommodations when they are asking for them, like maybe end of junior or beginning of senior year. So it's important to start telling kiddos and their parents from an early age, like, if you think this is a thing, we need to get tested for it now and have these conversations now. So that is all I have to say. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your time this morning and for listening to this topic that is so helpful to many of our students here.
So I think it's my turn now, and I'm Nicole Carter, and I work at Millsaps College. I do kind of 3 separate things that are all interconnected. So you see it says care and accessibility specialist. I'm also Title IX coordinator. And so we can go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to talk to you about our process. Holly did a really good job of telling you how each different college or university is going to have a different process and procedure. We do this, and this is our exact policy right now. So a couple of weeks prior to the beginning of each semester, I will send out a link to all students for our registration form. What happens is some students may or may not check their email, as Holly also alluded to, but I send it out multiple times. And one big thing that I'll key on just starting out is the difference between high school and college as far as accommodations is really drastic, because it's all student-led here for us. The students are their best advocate, and they are their only advocate initially. I don't know who has accommodations coming from high school unless they tell me. So I send a blanket email to everybody, every single student, from incoming freshmen to seniors, about, would you like to register for any and all accommodations? Please fill out this registration form. And so they need to do that each semester. I'll send it out a few times each semester. Once I get the form completed, if they are a new registrant, I will ask them for a documentation of a disability. We send them the PDF or our little link of what that looks like for us, what our requirements are for documentation of disabilities. And it can be a number of different things, but returning registrants also have to register. And they may want an adjustment of their accommodations, which we can do at any time. They just have to come in and speak with me about that. So as I alluded to prior, we require documentation of disability, and Holly also touched on this too. We ask for something from MD, psychologist, psychiatrist, or whoever was your diagnosing doctor. But if you don't have that initially, we will also accept your IEP or your 504 or whatever you call it, your accommodation plan from your high school. We try to remove as many barriers as possible. Some people require multiple things. We require at least one of these. The only time that that is different is if you're applying for an ESA, which is an emotional support animal, because to legally be qualified for an emotional support animal, you actually have to have a diagnostic report from a psychiatrist or psychologist saying that you are considered to be mentally disabled and you have this diagnosis. And that this ESA, the emotional support animal, is part of a treatment plan that they have with you. So that's the only time that we require it be from a psychologist or a psychiatrist specifically. And we wouldn't accept like an MD on that because they technically cannot diagnose in the same manner. All documentation must be less than 3 years old. So if you had accommodations your freshman year, but you did not continue them, we would need a reevaluation of some sort. And that again can be a doctor's note or a letter saying, Shannon is allowed these accommodations based on this diagnosis of ADHD or whatever the case may be. And we will accept that from that point. So meeting with the accessibility specialist, everybody's required to meet with me. And the only reason that we do that is not to create any barriers or anything like that. It's to assess what we can do based on what they are asking for. We're going to look at their accommodations and go over what it is that they had and what can we do. What do they think they need to be successful? A lot of that stuff was listed on those websites that Holly showed you as far as extended time on tests. Do we test in a separate private location? Do you need a note taker? Those types of things. But not all accommodations that they received in high school can be given in college. We can't always give extra time on assignments and homework. That's not always a fair ask. And the reason it isn't is because we can't give them advantages. It can only be equal access, right? So if it's giving them extra time because they're allowed that as far as testing, absolutely. But if they had knowledge that they were going to have a paper, I always go back to like writing a paper. You have your prompt at the same time as everybody else. And when you start it is up to you. So if they had the prompt at the same time and they have all these weeks and weeks to do it, the professor can't alter the course of study to specifically help that one person. If it changes the parameters of the course, then we can't do that. But a lot of times we see maybe high schools do a lot of one-on-one tutoring. We don't have that as an accommodation, but we have tutors free of charge here for all students in almost every single class. So we can mirror, like I said, closely, but not everything translate in a way that we can do that here at college. So once they do meet with me and we discuss which accommodations will help them to be successful here, I will write a letter and send that out. So it's just basically their accommodations letter. It'll be sent to all their professors and it'll list what accommodations that they are allowed to have. And the reason I say allowed is that they may not use each accommodation for each class. It is very specific for them. And they are the ones who have to activate them. So I will send the accommodation letter out to the professors and to the students simultaneously. It says in this accommodation letter that the student is required to meet with them. So next slide, please, because I think I got a little ahead of myself. Yeah. So meeting with the professors, we require that the students meet with the professors because, again, they're their own advocate and they are adults at this point, and we're considering them to be as such and treating them as such. So they are required to set up a meeting with their professor in each class to decide what and how they're going to implement each of their accommodations that they're allowed and that they're asking to activate. What that may look like is them saying, hey, I get extended time on tests and I can test in a private location. Is there somewhere here that I can do that? We're a smaller college, so we don't have a testing center. Most big like State and Ole Miss, they have testing centers. And so they would facilitate that through OCR and the disability services. But here we're smaller. And so we may not always be able to have it done by the professor. The professor will then say, I don't have a office or a quiet space for you to do it. And they contact me and I proctor a lot of tests up here. We have a lot of space in student life. So again, it's basically student-led and they're in charge of activating their own accommodations and telling each professor what they're going to use for that class and what they don't need. Sometimes math is not hard in a way that language is hard. And so they may need extra time on their comp test, but they do not need it on their math test. So it's up to them to say that, and the professors are willing to work with them and they activate it. And so once I send that letter out, it doesn't mean that they're just going to blanketly give them everything if they don't come and have a meeting with them. They will discuss with the professor what they need in each class, and then they will come up with the plan together of how that's going to be accomplished. And I help as needed. So like I said, and I keep trying to reiterate, is that the student is their best and own advocate. It's all student led. I think that's the biggest difference here between high school versus college. We have students who are allowed note takers, but if they don't tell me that they want a note taker for their Spanish class or their accounting class, it's not just blanketly given to them. They have to tell me that they need that, and then we can activate that right away. But because not everything is always needed, we do not blanketly give them. So they need to be a grown-up, right, in a way that they don't. So that's the first thing that we discuss when I meet with them is how are we going to best support you and what do you need us to do? You need to tell me what is needed, and then we will help support you and create a support system for you, because all the supports that they had are not there. So our biggest goal as a accessibility specialist center here is to create supports that they are lacking, that they had in high school. How do we create that bridge and have them supported as they need to be supported?
All right, and in an example of saving the best for last, here I am. I'm going to ask Shannon to move these slides along, and I want to first share with you the two experiences I have in working with students with physical disabilities. First was when I lived in Ohio. We had a student with muscular dystrophy. I went to the University of Dayton, which of the two major universities there was by far not the best setup for someone who was wheelchair bound, but it's just where he felt he should go. I also have a child who was paralyzed when she was in first grade. My wife really took the lead in that college search with her, and my daughter's a very capable student, and looked at a variety of options from as far east as Richmond, Virginia, as far west as California, and ultimately chose a small school in North Carolina, in no small part because there was family nearby. And On her return trip to schools in California, American Airlines managed to lose her wheelchair. It was later discovered, but it went to New Jersey twice before making it back to her. So being near family became important. Okay, next slide. Just take a second and read these. It was pretty stunning, and she visited a high number of schools. She's 15. You're welcome to roll your eyes. I won't see you. But it was a lot. But in trying to figure out where to go, understanding the physical setup of a campus was very important. There are colleges that are very clear in telling you who you can work with and what the services are that they offer. There are admission offices that are familiar with it. There are some that are completely not familiar with it. The number of students in a school made a difference. Smaller schools tended, frankly, to have fewer kids who had those needs, and the resources or money was a huge factor. We visited Duke. Actually, they visited Duke. I did not, but we visited Stanford. And as you might imagine, at schools that have 10, 20 billion in endowment, basically at Duke, the statement was, anything you need, we will make it happen. And my child met with a student from Kansas City who, for whom they physically altered the room. Anything she needed, it was going to be there. That was not the case anywhere else except out in California. But it's just the reality. You have to be ready to search for information, and it's just how it is. So next slide. Okay, I've chosen the University of Mississippi and Mississippi State just as the largest schools, and I just want you to read what they say that they provide. I like what they state last, is that the accommodation is necessary to provide the student equal access to the educational opportunities provided by the university. I think it's a very clear statement. Okay, the next slide. This continues what they're doing. Accommodation does not lower academic or program standards, does not fundamentally alter the essential elements or expected outcomes of a course, program, or activity. That third point, undue financial or administrative burden on the university, it's very real. These schools are not equipped to say, yes, we're going to pay for an aide, we're going to pay for the remodeling of a room. You're going to hit places where ramps may not be there. It's just reality for some institutions. Okay, next one. Mississippi State. They have a disability resource center, and you've heard Holly talk a little bit about it. As you read through these things, understand how important it is that the student be the one who is advocating for him or herself in this process. You heard it from Holly, you heard it from Nicole, you're going to hear it from me. At 18, these places do not want to hear from mom and dad. They want to hear from the student. And the student has to grow the confidence and the ability to say when something is not right, or they are going to struggle. I've seen it firsthand. Nicole sees it probably every day. So I cannot stress enough the importance of the student becoming a strong self-advocate. Okay, next slide. Couple of things here that really were important to me. Meet the qualifications and maintain essential institutional standards for courses, service, and campus activities. Again, these are student responsibilities, and they're going to continue. The one at the end, read and respond to all correspondence. Well, I would like our high school students to do that. The next slide. More student responsibilities. Apply for services in a timely manner. Submit notification of disability to professors at the beginning of each semester. Plan and schedule accommodations. Submit test requests in a timely manner. So notice this is all student-based. Okay, next one. More. All right. If they're having problems experiencing things or receiving accommodations, student needs to report. If accommodations are no longer working or no longer needed, student needs to report. It was very student driven. In my child's case, she was paralyzed, but does have use of her extremities some. She's able to write, she's able to type. She did get extended time on tests, which frankly, she didn't apply for until she was a senior in high school, because frankly, pride kept her from doing it and felt like it was an advantage she didn't need until someone outside of the school said, that's ridiculous, go do it. What I have seen with students with physical disabilities, the advocacy, asking questions along the way. My wife, who is one of the more diligent people I've ever met, and my daughter had an entire list, basically a rubric for each school that they would ask every question to every school and see how those answers were. We visited a school, and I was part of it, pretty near here, about 3 hours away. And when we left, we went, oh, okay, they're pretty good. 2 schools later, off the list, because we could easily look at the results from those campuses and understand which ones provided enough services, where things were accessible, where they weren't, where there might be other students in similar situations, where they have a history of this. When a campus tells you, we haven't had a kid in a wheelchair in 8 years, we know, okay, they may not be real prepared for what the needs may be. Okay, next one. First of all, and I rewatched a video my daughter put together for me a few years ago about this process in another presentation. When we showed up to the first campus we visited in California, wife, daughter, me, younger son, and we drove on a campus, and my wife said, do we even get out of the car because of the hills? And I said, sure. And I left them and went and visited with a friend. But we knew we could scratch that off the list. I had 2 students with physical disabilities I went to college with. One was in a wheelchair, one had crutches. I went to a very small school on a flat piece of ground. It was extremely navigable. They lived on first floors in their dorms. My child lived on the first floor of her dorm or apartment building all 4 years. She had a private bathroom each time. In terms of classrooms, there was more than one time where she had to say, hey, this is set for a different floor, and frankly, I can't get there. Can we make sure that it is in a better space? And the dining facilities were very navigable. She had a tray. She would put that tray on her lap, but she was also in a position where we could, or she could ask someone to carry food for her if she needed. Okay, next one. That list of questions, if you remember who I am or what school I'm at, if you want to know what questions we have, I think we still have that binder, but going in prepared with that is important. Her ability to converse with students who had disabilities and to talk about their own experiences on campuses was extremely beneficial, because she's hearing right from people who are in her situation of what life might be about. She served at an organization at her college about, it was 4 students with disabilities, and sort of advocating for their needs and what the campus could do to improve their time there. And they made some tangible improvements. Again, what's possible to have on campus? Can you have an aide who helps you? What does health services provide? And we were When we showed up with a freshman year, we went and visited health services. They knew who she was. Had medication there, had additional catheters that were there in case it was needed. Those are things that a person has to ask about if they want this. Okay, next one. The academic service part is important because can you get around the campus does not just include what is going to be involved academically. And as you've heard, there's some amazing things offered to students if they need those academic services. And again, will a student be on their own? For the school that she went to, I knew the person who ran admissions. I said, do you have any other students here in wheelchairs? And he immediately said, got 4. So we knew they've got some experience with it. And it's going to be okay to get around, and there might be a kindred spirit. Now, no one else, except for one student, came to that school afterwards, and it was someone who had actually met with her during a visit and who understood very well what the college could provide. Okay, there we go.
All right, no questions have come in, Shannon, so far through the Q&A, but we want to open it up for more questions. If anybody has from the content, I also want to share in the chat for everyone on our YouTube channel, Get to College. We actually have about a 2.5-minute video that we would love for you all to share within your classrooms or to your students from Jackson State University's Disability Services Office that talks all about, it's targeted for high school students on how they can be those self-advocates, as we've heard throughout today's webinar, how critical that is for the students as they transition to college. So if you're like, how can I share this within the students that may need it? We have a video. Obviously, you'll have this great recording from our experts here. So if anyone has any questions, if you'll put those in the Q&A for the content. So far, nothing has come through. Shannon, did you have any questions for our panelists?
I don't think so. I think you all have been very clear on, I like how we moved from the high school side, what you're providing for students there, to the college side, Nicole saying this is exactly how we do things. And then, of course, Colin, thank you so much for sharing your personal experience with your own child as you went through that process. I think that's very valuable to know. You know, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to actually have lived that process. And Holly as well with your children. So thank you all for being very open and vulnerable and sharing those with us. You know, we hope that this will help each one of you as you navigate this process with any students who may need accommodations as they're looking ahead to the college access process. We will email you the recording for this webinar, and we will also post it on our YouTube channel. So be looking for that. If you know someone who might need to listen to this, or you would like to listen to this, we will have that information out there. Also, we would appreciate if you would complete the short survey that will automatically pop up at the end of this meeting. We do use this. We look at this every week or every month, I guess. We'd like for you to fill that out and give us your true feedback on today's webinar so that we can keep improving as we continue our Topic Tuesday webinar sessions. Speaking of next Topic Tuesday session, stay tuned for our spring sessions. In January, we will be talking to a group of career coaches and connecting best practices of career to students. In February, we will be talking about supporting marginalized students in the college process. And then in March, we will have a group of national speakers. It will not be a webinar. It will actually be a meeting about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we encourage you to come and hear that great presentation by those national speakers there. And then in April, we're talking about FAFSA simplification and all the changes that will be coming your way for the free application for federal student aid. And lastly, in May, we'll be talking about our new FACE scholarship in Mississippi for foster youth. So we look forward to having lots of you available in the spring as well. And remember, if you participate in 5 webinars Throughout the year, you'll have the opportunity to apply for 0.5 CEUs. If you participate in all 10 webinars for the fall and spring, you'll have the opportunity to apply for 1 full CEU. You can register for any of these webinars on our Get to College website. They are listed under the Educator tab and then under Professional Development. While you're there registering, please check out all the other resources for you and your students listed under that Educator tab. A few of the trainings that we're going to have in the spring, we will have one last FAFSA training, virtual FAFSA training on Thursday, January the 19th from 1 to 3:30. So if you still have students, and I'm sure you do, that you're helping with FAFSA process, make sure you sign up to get a opportunity to hear more about how to complete the FAFSA with your students. And then in February, on February 15th, we will have a college access training that will kind of cover everything from A to Z with helping your students access college. And then in the spring, we'll also continue our college and career readiness teacher chats. We'll have one in January, February, and March, and those are all from 3:30 to 4:15 in the afternoon, and they're virtual. And as always, feel free to contact us, via email or phone or any of our social media outlets here. So thank you so much for being with us today. And we hope to see you again in the new year. So thank you again, Colin, Nicole, and Holly. And we hope everyone has a great day. See you later.